Hi, all. I'm going to go over the at-home experiment assignment that is due on Thursday, April 16 at 8 p.m. I actually extended the timeline for that, so it's actually due at 9 p.m. Um, but so I have this Google Doc open right here. I gave you the experiment instructions, and hopefully by now you've watched my experiment video and read over the instructions and the procedure. So in my experiment video, I do the trial one, I do trial one, and I did the last trial. So I did trial one and the last trial in the video. So in terms of calculations, I'm going to go over trial one calculation in the hopes that um, you'll be able to do trial two and trial three calculations on your own once I go over trial one calculations. So let's just review what we did for trial one. So in our data table, it says that we added a half teaspoon of baking soda, which equals 5.5 grams of baking soda. So if you read my notes on the side, it explains how I got 5.5. Basically, I did 2.5 times 2.2 grams because there are 2.2 grams of baking soda in 1 milliliter of baking soda. So make sure for trial two, whatever amount you picked for the milliliters. So let's say you picked 3 milliliters for your trial two. You would have to just multiply 3 times 2.2 to get your number of grams of baking soda. All right. So I'm going to move on. I'm also going to explain how I got the mass of acetic acid here. So if you remember from your pre-experiment question, I told you guys that 5% of vinegar is acetic acid. So in order to get the mass of acetic acid, you have to multiply the mass of vinegar by 0.05. So that's why I multiplied the 15 grams by 0.05 to get 0.75. All right, so for example, let's say that you used 20 milliliters of vinegar, which is also 20 grams for trial two. You would have to multiply the 20 grams by 0.05 to get the mass of acetic acid. So I'm not going to do that right here because I don't know what amount you use for your trial two and three, right? So, but that's my tip for the data table. So let's go ahead and do the trial calculations. So in trial one, I'm just going to fill in the blanks here with what I use for trial one, which is also what you use for trial one. So you used 5.5 grams of baking soda and 0.75 grams of acetic acid. So the question is asking how many moles of CO2 was produced. So we're given grams of baking soda and grams of acetic acid. We have to calculate the moles of each in order to find the moles of carbon dioxide. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So remember, we solved for the molar mass of baking soda yesterday or the day before in our pre-experiment assignment. So baking soda is 84 grams per mole. Acetic acid is 60 grams per mole. So I'm just gonna take a note of that. So I'm gonna come here and start my calculation. So I'm gonna divide my 5.5 grams by 84 grams per mole to get the moles of baking soda. So I'm gonna do that on my calculator. 84, so I get 0.065 moles of baking soda. And I'm gonna do the same for acetic acid. I'm gonna divide by the molar mass. All right, 0.75 divided by 60, I get 0.0125 moles of acetic acid. All right, so the question is asking how many moles of CO2 was produced. So we're trying to convert the mole of baking soda to carbon dioxide and then the mole of acetic acid to carbon dioxide, right? So we have to do a mole ratio. We know if you did your pre-experiment questions, let's go back to the equation. So we know that this is our recipe for the reaction. And all the ingredients, all the reactants and products are 1 to 1 to 1 mole ratio. So there's no need for us to really put anything down except we just say, okay, so everything's 1 to 1 mole ratio. So if we use this much moles of baking soda, that means that we created 0.065 moles of CO2 by using this much baking soda. And then for acetic acid, since we use this much of acetic acid, we would create the same amount of moles of carbon dioxide. All right, good. So here's the part you have to remember from our limiting reactants notes that we have to choose the less amount of product formed because that's the max amount of product that was formed because of the limiting reactant. So the actual amount of CO2 produced is 0.0125 moles of carbon dioxide because that's the less amount, meaning that acetic acid was our limiting reactant, right? Because it limited the amount of carbon dioxide that was produced in the bag. So you always want to pick or circle the product that was less, all right? So in trial 1, how many grams of carbon dioxide was produced? So we're gonna take our moles of carbon dioxide and we need to convert it to grams. So we're going to multiply by the molar mass of carbon dioxide. So the molar mass of carbon dioxide is 44 grams per mole. So I'm gonna multiply the moles by our molar mass and I get 0.55 grams of CO2. All right, so what this means is, remember when we did trial 1, the gas that was produced in that little Ziploc bag was carbon dioxide, and we created 0.55 grams of carbon dioxide in that bag. All right, so you're going to do the same setup for trial 2 and 3 calculations. All right, so use these notes to finish trial 2 and 3 calculations. And then there's one post-op question at the end. There's only one, and I want you to think about it and write your explanation and submit the assignment on Thursday by 9 p.m. All right, good luck.